Respectful of everybody's time. Super excited to do this topic today. We had a huge turnout of folks signed up for this. I don't know if it's a New Year's resolution to focus on, your financial health, but I thank you for attending. And just a couple of housekeeping items. We do have a Q&A section on the screen. So feel free. Rachel on our team is actually monitoring the Q&A. So, and I'll also try to keep a lookout on it, but sometimes I might not notice. So Rachel's going to help me. We also have some resources that you can see. When you registered for it, we had some pre-event handout, which was basically a budget worksheet, and I'll explain why that's helpful, but it's also here on the screen as well. And then at the end, we will have it's like 5-question survey. And I can't stress enough how important it is for us to get your feedback. So please, if you have a few seconds just to send that to us, that would be great. I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Janya Stout. I am actually the president of retirement and wellness here at Prime Capital Financial. I've been in the retirement industry for 30 years. So it's a topic that I live and breathe. And my most favorite thing is doing any of the education as it pertains to financial topics. So I'm super excited to be here today to deliver a very important subject. So, the big question is, what is your number and why does knowing your number matter? I think, and when I specifically am talking about your number, it's, one of the things that we see, and I've done thousands of one-on-ones in my career with Working America. And, a lot of the individuals we meet with say, can I retire? Am I saving enough? I don't know if I'm on track. And there's nothing worse than just kind of not knowing if what you're doing is good or bad. So I think that, one of the things that I'm hoping that you take away from our topic today, which we only have 30 minutes. So we've got a lot to unpack here in 30 minutes, but it is important for you to know your number for a few reasons. One, it helps de-stress your life, right? And that's super important for your health, for your productivity, for your relationships, everything in your life. But I also want you to know, if you're sitting here listening, you might be like, am I the only one that doesn't know this? And I would say, Transamerica did a study. All the big financial firms, record keepers do studies every year. We actually have an annual financial wellness study we do here at Prime. And we see this overwhelmingly. More than half of individuals don't know how much they need for retirement. And why also it's important for you to know the number is our retirement years could be a very long period of time. So I always talk about Johns Hopkins actually came out a couple years ago and said somebody is living on this earth that's going to live to 150 years old. And that is somewhat mind-blowing, right? A lot of times if I'm doing this or saying this in a public setting, people are like, oh, I hope it's not me. I don't want to live to 150. But if you think about it, with our healthcare and things of that nature, we are living much longer. So your retirement years could be 25, 30, 40 years. That's a big chunk of time that we need to make sure we know and we're planning appropriately for those retirement years. You can see here it's a life expectancy probability, and there is a 72% chance that you or your spouse will live to age 90. So again, there's a good chance we're going to be around for a long time. So let's make sure we're have knowledge on what our number needs to be. I thought this was some interesting data that I wanted to share. And I'm also sharing it because when I meet with individuals or someone, one of our financial advisors or educators that are out there in the field, we hear a lot, people will say, I plan on retiring when I'm 65, or pick a number. But what's interesting is if you look at the data, is that retirees are actually retiring sooner than they actually thought they were. And then you can see on the right-hand side, what were the reasons for that retirement? And health problems, unfortunately, had the biggest percentage for why people retired earlier. A lot of that might depend on the type of work you're doing. If you're doing the type of work that's labor intensive, sometimes, you can't do those same things anymore. So you finally decide to retire. Companies are downsizing. A lot of people end up retiring because they have to care for a spouse. So maybe you're really healthy, but your spouse or another family member needs your help. And then on the positive side, which is highlighted in purple there, is 35% retired early because they could afford to. The other thing I will tell you, and I'm a big storyteller, so I'm trying to keep myself focused because I only have 30 minutes. But there is nothing better than when we're working with an individual and the start of the conversation is, I don't know if I can retire. I don't know my number. I don't know what I'm supposed to be saving. I'm just throwing as much as I can in there. I'm trying to do it right. My employer did a great job by automatically enrolling me in the plan, but am I okay? And the reaction when we tell somebody, one of our engagement advisors that works on our Success Hub that I'll talk about, they kind of walk through and help you figure out, like, can you retire? But when we see them, the smile on their face, when we say to them, you know what, you could retire. And so there are a good chunk of people, based on this data, 35% retire early because they could afford to. So we see that all the time. I guarantee you, and if you ask any of our prime capital advisors, they will share stories of people that were working and didn't realize that they didn't have to work anymore. So back to what your number is. The problem with answering that is it will depend, but everybody wants a benchmark, right? Like people like to see, like, where should I be tracking? My oldest daughter is 27 years old. She's in the Army, very, very good, diligent saver. And, she said, hey, Mom, I've got $100,000 saved. And I was like, whoa, like I had no idea. And she's like, is that okay? Now, again, she's in the Army. She lives on an Army base. She doesn't have as much expenses as everyone. So she's just been socking it away. And I was like, oh, you're doing great. So again, I think sometimes looking at this chart will help you get a feel for, and again, it's just a benchmark. It's not something, because everybody's situation is unique and different. And I would not rely on this 100%. You really need to dig deeper. But if you want to know, are you kind of tracking the right way? This is a good chart for you to see. And basically, like, if like I'm 55, so I should have 7 times my salary saved to be able to replace 70% of my income when I go to retire. So again, hopefully that's helpful for you. So again, as I mentioned, what's your number? It depends, right? Everybody has different, desires for when they retire. I met with one of my clients last week, 2 weeks ago, and she said, she's approaching 60, and she said she wants to retire within the next 5 years. And she said she doesn't want to do anything. She does not want to travel. She's done all of that. She's not a big spender, so she has different desires versus someone I met with 3 weeks ago that says, I can't wait to travel. I finally get to travel. I've been working really hard. Those are going to have much different, impacts to the amount of money you're going to need, right? Your lifestyle, inflation, your healthcare. Healthcare is going to be a big expense for you in retirement. Fidelity actually has done studies and released this information every year, but a couple of years ago, their data said that a couple that retires, so this is two people that retire at age 65, are going to need around $250,000 to $275,000 just to pay for healthcare expenses. So a lot of times people react when they hear that and they say, well, wait a minute, I have Medicare. Why do I need $250,000? Medicare does not cover all of your healthcare expenses. So that is going to be important. And depending on your health, your expense could be higher or lower. So that's why the it depends is, and it's so hard for a financial advisor to just give you a number. But I want this to be valuable for you. So I want you to be able to walk away from this presentation with at least a better idea of, are you tracking in the right direction? And there are a couple of questions that you need to answer to help you better know and not have to have the it depends side. So, and this correlates with why we sent the budget worksheet, right? I can tell you that a lot of individuals that we work with do not know what they're truly spending money on. There's a lot of folks will say, you know, I just spend what I make. And then there's the spectrum. I've met with some other individuals that have it down to a T. I mean, they have a written budget. They know exactly every dollar that comes in and where it goes to, and they're very mindful of it. So we've got that whole spectrum, but you really need to understand kind of how much you'll spend in retirement. And I will tell you, the best way to do that is to start working on it now. Because if you wait, if you don't focus on this in your earlier years, when you go to retire, let's say at 60, 65, it's hard to create that new habit, right? So start early. I know nobody likes the big budget word. It sounds awful and yucky unless you're one of those people that loves details and spreadsheets. But it really is so important because remember, you might live 30 years in retirement. This is a big deal, everybody. So we've got to take it and take some ownership of it. So you want to really answer that question. How much will you spend in retirement? And that's why the budget worksheet we sent you has a lot of data points on there that you can use because people forget things like, you know, maybe you can't forget that you need an oil change. Don't forget that if you like getting your nails done, gosh, I know that costs more than it used to when I was younger, but there are lots of categories that you don't want to ignore. The good news is there's some great, like, we have Excel spreadsheets. We sent that pre-work for you that's also listed here. But we also have some fancy Excel spreadsheets. If anyone wants one, please let us know. So again, try to look at this. Try to adopt a written budget. I'm a big fan of a written budget, not a back of the napkin budget, and start to track that. I think that it will be a big eye opener for you as you get closer to retirement. The other thing, one of the things that I saw, especially when interest rates were so low before the environment we're in now, is people were refining their homes and they were doing this right before retirement. So they were going into their retirement years with a mortgage. So, you know, the more that you can tackle that before you hit retirement, that will also help you stay on track. Now, here's the magic question. How long do I need my money to last? Like, I wish we all had a magic crystal ball that would tell us how long we're going to live. We don't know that. Interesting, the individual that I mentioned I met with last week, the one that's turning 60, she shared with me that both her mother and father died very early, like in their early 60s. And she was like, I'm not going to live long. And, you know, it was kind of sad to hear that. But, you know, she was basing it off of longevity in her family. Now, you can certainly, I know, like my dad, for example, he's 82 and he's the longest living stout before him died at 58. So he beat those, stats, and a lot of that has to do with healthcare. But you definitely want to kind of look at different things as far as, what's your longevity? What's your health like? Are you healthy today? Are you a smoker? Do you have diabetes? Those are things that can help you think through like how long you're going to live. Now, it's not a crystal ball. We don't know for sure, but it gives you some kind of feel for it. But as I mentioned earlier, here is some of the data from the actuarial tables that will show you that a couple has a 25% chance of living beyond 97. That's pretty crazy. But again, another big reason why we need to spend time thinking about what our number should be. And then the third question you want to answer is, what income sources will I have and what's the gap, right? So we know, at least for now, we know we have Social Security. Some of you here may be the lucky ones that are part of a pension. If you ever worked for the government or the military, you might have a pension from your government or the military. Or your employer may have had one of the, or still have a pension plan, even though most employers today have kind of either frozen or terminated their pension plans. And now we only have like the 401ks and the 403bs that we all have grown accustomed to. And so you want to look at all the different sources that you can, pull money from when you go to retire. So here's a chart that kind of from the Department of Labor and the Bureau of Labor Statistics that shows about 26%. I've seen studies that show that's closer to 30% is going to come from personal retirement. And then about 28% comes from Social Security. And then you'll see other, and that might be like an inheritance or something of that nature. Investments, maybe something outside of your 401k. It might be like a brokerage account that you've been saving money in. And then 24% from current employment earnings, right? So that means more and more people are working in retirement. Now they're not working full time. Maybe they're just doing a part-time job. I actually run we have a series called Retire Wealth, which is a 4-part series for pre-retirees. And I do the one on emotionally preparing for retirement. And I talk a lot about just because you retire doesn't mean like you have to stop working completely. Go do something you love. Go work in a coffee shop, a flower shop, whatever it might be. And I could talk another 30 minutes just on how that impacts your longevity. Is having that social interaction. So anyway, these are the potential sources of income that you'll need. So if Social Security is around 30%, that means you need to target to have 70% of your income coming from you in other sources. So that's a big number. Estimating your Social Security, you can go to SSA.gov. And see what your Social Security benefit is tracking. There's also, for those who are really interested in understanding their longevity, I actually did this the other day. You see that URL site right there, longevityillustrator.org. So you answer a bunch of questions like your age, how long you're going to work, are you healthy, are you a smoker, all of those things. And then it gives you like an estimate on your longevity. And I was playing around with it. And what was really interesting to me was if I said I was going to retire at 65, my longevity was, let's say, 85. If I said I was going to work till 70, I had a higher chance that I was going to live longer. So it wasn't a big jump, but I found it really interesting that working longer actually helped impact my longevity in a positive way. And that really kind of aligns very much with the whole theory of, keeping active and having a social network, and how that does help your health as well. All right, so those were the 3 questions that I think that, you should really think about and try to answer. But the reality is some of those things you have no control of. You have no control of how long you're going to live. You don't really have control of how the market's going to do. Nothing, I mean, there are, you don't know exactly, how much you're going to spend in 20 years when you retire, because we don't know inflation is going to, we don't know where inflation will be. We know historically things cost a lot more. I think what's kind of interesting too is when I was younger, starting in this business, I used to think, my gosh, having $1 million when you retire, like, you're a rock star at that time. Like, wow, I could, like, do I get can I buy a plane? Like, I had no idea, like, that now $1 million, if you think about it, going out 20 or 30 years from now, just because of inflation, it's not going to give you the same that you think of it as it is today. So the number you need to save is pretty important. So focus on what you can control. And that's what I want to talk about here for the next 10 minutes. So you should be saving between 10 and 15% for retirement. And that would include your employer match. So if your employer is matching, giving you a 3% match or a 5% match, back into that and say, okay, if they give me 5%, I need to be saving 10%. If you're sitting here listening to me right now and you're like, hey, Janya, you're absolutely crazy. I can't save 10%. I'm trying to make ends meet. I get it. So don't, hurt yourself too much and create a lot of debt, but try to make like baby steps to get there. Review your asset allocation to align with your goals. I'm going to use the individual I met with last week. It just kind of funny that it all works, that her and I having our conversation really speaks to what we're talking about here. So she had a certain amount of money saved. And based on the fact that she had already gone through her budget, she didn't think she was going to be, we did a financial plan, kind of how much are you going to need when you retire, et cetera. So she didn't need to, she had a good amount saved. So between her savings and Social Security, she didn't need to invest her money so in a very risky portfolio. So she could take some of that risk off the table. So I think that's really important for you to look at. And that's where a financial advisor at Prime Capital, or if you have your own, whoever you work with, all I ask is definitely talk to somebody, because you want to make sure your asset allocation aligns with your risk tolerance and risk capacity, and it aligns with your goals. The other thing is Roth versus pre-tax. It's hard sometimes when we do these broad webinars, because we're going to have different people of different ages on, right? So I can't answer every specific question that would align with everyone listening. But I do think that if you are a lot of people, if your employer has automatically enrolled you in your retirement plan, I would say there's a 99.9% chance they auto-enrolled you in a pre-tax deduction. Well, if you're 25 and you're in your early career, you might not need that pre-tax. You don't need that tax savings. Roth could be super powerful for you. That's something that we do here at Prime Capital with our Success Hub, is really help work with you to say, should you be on Roth or pre-tax? I would say over the last 2 months, with all the one-on-ones I've done, the biggest thing I did in those interactions was change people's pre-tax deduction to Roth. So that's important. You can control that. Don't forget about your healthcare retirement savings. So if your employer offers you a health savings account, it is not necessarily a health spending account. It's really a savings account. HSA is the most powerful vehicle that you can save in, that you will never pay taxes on, ever, assuming when you take it out at retirement, you're spending it for healthcare needs, right? Which I've already showed you those statistics. People are going to need money to pay for healthcare. So if you have an HSA and, this year open enrollment comes up, maybe you didn't elect that high deductible plan that gave you the access to the HSA, definitely take note of it. I think it's super important to think of. That is something you can control. And then minimize debt as you enter pre-retirement years, right? So as you get closer to age 60, 65, really start being mindful. If you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, try to adopt that budget. The budget is really going to help you so that you can live 30 years in retirement and not be stressed out. Save early. So the power of your dollar, I cannot stress enough. Save early as you can. There's lots of data. I could show tons of charts that show people that started saving, like especially like if you're in your 20s. I love meeting with that generation that's coming in, and they don't have as many expenses as we do as we get older, because most of them don't have kids yet. They don't own a house yet. They haven't bought up all these things and have, and so if we can get you saving early, like get to that 10, 15%. If you're living at home for now, like sock away 15, 20%. If you need to scale it back later, that's fine, because the data will show you that if those dollars go in early, the time it has to grow gives you a huge advantage compared to waiting and starting to save later. Stay in the market. Don't stress out. If you've had a financial interaction with one of our coaches, with your advisor, and you've already gone through this risk profile, you've got your risk strategy, kind of stay the course, right? This chart is, pretty interesting. It shows that, and I remember back in 2008, people took money off the table and didn't get back into the market and lost out on some of the best years of investing. So don't make an emotional decision if you start to see volatility and it's making you uncomfortable. Talk to us, talk to your own advisor, whoever it is, just have a conversation. Let us talk to you. There may be other ways to diversify that will help reduce some of that risk as well. Lastly, I know I only have like a minute left. I might go a couple minutes over, but I always like to end with this. And usually if I'm in person, I get it interactive, but it's a little hard to do on a webinar. But answer this question in your head. Think about the last time you planned an event. Maybe it was a birthday party, maybe it was a wedding, maybe it was a graduation, whatever it was. And think about all the steps you did for that big event. So I got married 3 years ago. So I'll use myself as an example. I was like, okay, we got to find a venue. And then we had to go and taste the food. That took time. We had to look at flowers, even though I tried to do like a much more scaled down wedding. There's lots of little details that get involved in it, right? So then we had to do the invitations. Who are we going to invite? All the different coordination, the DJ or a band, whatever it might be. So I probably spent, this is probably on a low end, but I'm just going to say I spent 25 hours all in. My husband actually is a very big planner, so he did a lot of it too. But let's say I spent 25 hours planning for my wedding. My wedding was about 4 hours long. So I spent 25 hours planning an event that was 4 hours long. How many of you, given the fact that you know now that longevity is here, we could be in retirement for 25 years. How many of you have spent an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours planning for an event called retirement that might last 25 to 30 years? So I get it. It's not something like most people, I've been doing this a long time, most people don't like to do or talk about finances, but that's what we're here for, is to help you with that. And then also, again, if you have an advisor you work with, go for it. Definitely do it. We just want to help de-stress your life and get you on track. We have, here's an action plan for you. We do, you may have heard me mention, we have something called the Success Hub that works with your advisor, that works with your HR department. And you can send an email here. We'll help you decide, do I need Roth or pre-tax? Hey, I've got this old 401k somewhere else. I know I need to roll it over. Can you help me? Should I roll it over? Should I leave it there? Big questions I hear all the time. Those are things that our Success Hub will help you with. So with that, I did it in 32 minutes, or basically 30 minutes. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm going to look real quick at the Q&A. How do you plan for expenses of a partner that you do not currently have? Wow. Ophelia, I have no idea how you plan for expenses of a partner that you don't have. So this is kind of like thinking in the future, saying like, when I do find somebody, you know, how do I know how much they're going to spend? It's hard to know that, but once you find them, make sure that you guys have meetings together. I don't know if anyone ever listens to Dave Ramsey, but he calls it the budget committee meeting. And he says you should meet once a month, get a bottle of wine or 6-pack or some seltzer water, whatever it is, and sit at the table and have a budget meeting every month and make sure your partner is on the same, you know, prioritizes the same way as you do. So the number one reason for divorce is financial problems. Somebody just asked, can you open an HSA not through the company? Technically, yes, but you have to be in a high deductible plan. So you can, and the company has to offer the HSA, but you have to make, one of the requirements for an HSA is you have to be in a high deductible plan. So I would be surprised if your employer had an HSA, but I mean, had a high deductible plan, but didn't offer you an HSA. But if you need some, if you'd like, definitely sign up at the end when we do the 5 questions. It'll ask you if you want to have a one-on-one financial consultation with someone from our Success Hub. Just go ahead and say yes, and we'll talk to you about like that HSA question. The slides are available. We'll send them out to you. And we'll also send that, Emily, I see the question about sending the spreadsheet. Will you be going through the basics of retirement, how much we need? Yep. Oh, I'm hoping to retire at age 45. Love that. That's awesome. Look up the FIRE community. That's Freedom in Retiring Early. A couple of years ago, I actually had a speaker that was a FIRE advocate. There is a whole group of people that are like very obsessed with like retiring super early. But guess how you do that? You got to really manage expenses and you got to save. So certainly can do that. You got to be hyper focused on this. Can you pay for Medicare supplements? No, I believe that answer is no, but Lynn, I'll have to double check that because that kind of goes into more the healthcare side. And I'm not as at the top of my mind, I don't want to mislead you there. I'm 66. I was told I cannot take advantage of HSA. Again, I'm going to have to, on those technical details on HSA, I will have to get back to you on that. I used to know that answer, but it's one of those things that I would want to double check before I ever gave you that answer. Do I think Social Security in its current form will still exist? I do. Social Security is, I live outside of Washington, D.C. in Annapolis, and I am on the board of American Retirement Association. I've actually been asked to testify in front of Congress. I've met with the DOL. I meet with congressmen and senators all the time. I will say Social Security is kind of like the untouchable, like, even though we do need to address it. But I do think that we will find a way to continue to have it. At some point, they may have to push out the Social Security numbers, like when you can, when Social Security starts, because people are living longer and people are working longer, right? But nobody right now wants to be that person running for Congress saying that that's on their platform because they still want voters. So it's a fine line, but I do think that we will persevere and we will have Social Security. That's just my personal opinion. I can't guarantee it, but I definitely think I'm an optimist. I think we will always find a way to make sure that that happens. Okay, I think that was all of the questions. But again, thank you all so much for your time. We have this recorded as well. If you want to go back through it, we'll also distribute out the PowerPoint slides. And please, please, please answer the survey for us so that we can continue to get better for you and deliver information in a format that you think is most helpful. So have a wonderful day, everybody.